Today we're diving into the world of a soldier's life during the monumental Napoleonic Wars through the pages of The Diary of a Napoleonic Foot Soldier. This is written by a real foot soldier, the German Jacob Walter. He is almost home after a harrowing retreat from Moscow. Let's get started. As I went through Posen, I met a man from my company. Among the 175 men, there was not one from my regiment, much less an acquaintance. When we recognized one another, we kissed each other for joy, and tears flowed down as each one said, "There were 5 of us common soldiers when we marched out of Moscow. Likely we are the last 2 of these left." This moved us to tears as I said, "This man from my company had been so unfamiliar to me before that I do not even know his name now." When I had to go on, he said that he was well and was just going home, but not with the convoy of the sick. I learned at home that he succeeded in doing this. I had asked him, when he went home, to go through Ellwangen and give my friends the news that they could be quite certain of my return, since I was hurrying home in good health and would soon arrive. It was still 250 leagues home, so my homecoming was still uncertain. Nevertheless, hope strengthened me always, so I finally came to Crossen, Torgau, and Leipzig, in which region German life began again, and because of decent eating and warm rooms, my strength increased somewhat. In Leipzig especially, I had good quarters, and everywhere there was sympathy and decent care for us. Each of us also obtained a new shirt, and those who could walk the best also got shoes, but I obtained only a shirt. This shirt was of fine white mangled cloth, yet it was not quite free from little shivs, and not until I came to Plauen did I try to put it on. In my quarters there I took off my old shirt and laid it in the warm stove upon a few small pieces of wood in order to murder my evildoers. But when I looked at it again, I pulled out only the shirt sleeve, all the rest had been burned. Now what else could I do but put on my new shirt? I tried it, put it on, and lay down in it, but the shivs irritated me so much that I slipped into my clothes without it and exchanged it at my landlady's for a woman's shirt. During the same night I also learned there were in our convoy 2 brothers from Bernlohof. These were of the Grenadier Company in the regiment of the Crown Prince, and one of them had died that very night. This strange chance that 2 brothers who had brought themselves as far as the home stretch by supporting each other should now be separated by the death of one is surely moving, more so for him who has a brother of his own to remember as I had. Then the march went through Bayreuth, Nuremberg, Ansbach, and Dinkelsbühl. Everywhere we were quartered without hesitation in towns and villages. Gifts also were given us on the wagons, especially in Dinkelsbühl. Finally, on February 24, 1813, I arrived here at Ellwangen with my extraordinary uniform. For such a long time I had been looking forward to my arrival at home, but the closer I came, the more my heart pounded at the thought of seeing my friends. I would rather have arrived at night time, but it had to be by day, toward 3 o'clock in the afternoon. My convoy from Innower Aslav to here had left behind 100 dead out of 175 men, and 75 men on a few wagons reached the border. Since people here already knew of the arrival of a third part of the Württemberg army, my brother and my brother-in-law, Herr Wagner, hurried toward Redstadt to ask about me if they should not meet me. All at once I saw my brother-in-law and my brother. They would not have recognized me, of course, as I looked then, but I called, thrust out my hand, and greeted them. They jumped into the air for joy and pressed my hands, and our hearts alone could feel, for we could not speak. Oh, that all people might know how high the love of friends and relatives can mount through such a chance meeting. One feels in it heavenly joy, the all-wise providence of God, and at the same time the miracle of nature. So my brother-in-law ran at once with powerful strides toward the town and announced my arrival to everyone. Thus I made my entrance with a sooty Russian coat, an old round hat, and, under and in my clothing, countless traveling companions, among which were Russians, Poles, Prussians, and Saxons. I stopped off at my very good friends, the innkeepers. Everyone wanted to lift me down and lead me, and everyone regarded me as weaker than I really was. However, I stayed only a few minutes in the room before I took off my clothes in the haymow, put on the new ones already provided for me, and washed myself. Only then was I fit for clean company. Now I also awaited my dear sisters, who did not come in from Rosenberg until the following day, and were another object of joy. The sincere joy of meeting again kindled the love of kindred as a divine flame, and now the wish was fulfilled for which they had shed so many tears and had so often prayed to God. The next day, on Shrove Thursday, a rest day was observed upon the request of the innkeeper. He brought it about through the city commandant Alberti, who often came to the tavern. I now had good eating and drinking, but my stomach could not stand many things as yet. I had to be quite careful all the time. On the third day, when we had driven on again, we came to Schorndorf in the evening and were shut into a house together, so that we should spread no sickness, for everywhere in Württemberg we were shunned like lepers. When we came to Weiblingen, the transport was divided, and those who were in better health, of whom I was one, went to Waldenbuch. Those whose health was worse went to Weihingen on the Enns. After a fortnight, I was detached to Asperg as a convalescent and was incorporated into the sharpshooters who were stationed there then, and I marched out several times with them. Barely 4 days had gone by, however, before the fever shook me again, although it did not break out. I ran a high temperature, and my nosebleed grew so bad that for several days a wet cloth had to be put around my head and neck every 5 or 6 minutes, and the bed had to be arranged for sitting up instead of lying down. But since my illness got worse, I was examined by the General Army physician as to my physical condition, and leave was granted to me on account of my arm, which had been hurt at the time of my capture, having been wrenched somewhat in the shoulder blade and reset. At the same time, an invalid pension was also promised me. When I had grown so weak that I became delirious and everyone doubted that I would recover, I was loaded upon a wagon with several Russians and driven to Weihingen. I was now so weak that I had to be lifted into and off the wagon, and I could take nothing any more but drinking water. In Weihingen, I was laid immediately in the room where all were brought who were near death. No medicine or food would stay with me. However, the bleeding had stopped. Finally, after 8 or 9 days had passed, I longed for vinegar, and I poured some of it into my soup. These few spoonfuls of soup stayed with me, and now my desire increased for vinegar and lettuce. The lettuce also stayed with me, although I had to take it secretly without the doctors knowing about it. My appetite gradually rose so that I had potato salad, pure vinegar, pork, potatoes, and cabbage, and cooked meat from the butcher brought to me secretly, and then I took no more medicine. I could attribute my recovery to nothing else than the bleeding, by which the corrupted blood came from me, and to the vinegar, which washed off the encrusted lining in my body, cleaned my blood, and encouraged my appetite again. When my relatives and friends heard of my illness, my little or younger sister, greatly worried, came to visit me, in 2 days, traveling 30 hours. All the sick were in the castle, and the fathers and mothers were kept from entering by the guard. All of them had to go away again without being permitted to speak with their sons. This caused my sister great pain, and she could not weep enough about it. Yet chance and luck made a secret meeting possible, for my sister waited until the time when sharpshooter Seybold from Hohenberg came to the post at the outer gate. He gave her permission to speak to me near the castle wall at the left and sent secretly, and had someone ask me to come out. When I saw my sister and she saw me, it took a long time for her to stop weeping and to speak. My appearance had frightened her terribly, for I was deathly pale, my coat was full of blood, and my voice deep and weak. But when I said that I thought myself out of danger since I felt almost well and could eat everything, she was somewhat comforted. However, the fear that she might not be allowed to speak with me had made her almost more ill than I thought myself to be. Thus we tarried as loving brother and sister for an hour's time, and then parted again with tears. During a period of 2 weeks, I still had violent attacks of gout in the soles of my feet as well as a strong headache, and yet I did not take the medicine but always told the physician that I was well now. However, he did not believe me but said that I must have a headache and gout in my feet, in which I agreed with him, but only in my thoughts. Finally, I was again brought as a convalescent, with about 70 men to Waldenbuch, to the convalescent hospital, and was quartered on the way in a village, but because of the fear of the nervous fever, we all had to go to the town hall and were not supposed to go out. This was hard on us, always to be treated like lepers. We went, therefore, into the inns and had some fun. It did not last long, though, until the citizens wanted to storm us, with alarms ringing and with the threat of bringing the militia from Stuttgart if we would not go back to the town hall at once. There was nothing left but to give in and to accept scorn as our reward. At Waldenbach Castle, I more or less got my strength back, since I bought what I wanted in addition to my regular diet. Then I wrote a letter to Lieutenant Stimmer at Asperg, asking him to help me in getting my promised discharge. This was done too, since the colonel in the hospital told me that if I wanted to go, I could call for my discharge from Herr Stimmer. At once I went through Stuttgart and toward Asperg, but as I came to the first village in the direction of Ludwigsburg, I suddenly got such a pain in my foot that I had to walk an hour instead of a quarter hour to get to the village. Several people who saw me and recognized me as a Russian, as everyone who had been there was called at that time, gave me presents. Finally, I came to the mayor's house and was given a conveyance to Asperg. I obtained my discharge and had myself driven home, where I then, in a short time, became entirely healthy and well. This concludes the 12th and last part of the story. Thank you very much for listening. What do you think of Walter's adventures? Please subscribe for more episodes and leave a comment.